Welcome back to the Sleep Well Journey podcast, and I'm joined by my very special guest, Kalli, who's always here, but it is still special. And today we're talking about something that affected you a ton as a professional and as a mom and as a wife and as a friend. And we'll talk about a few other things, but that first thing is burnout.
Yeah.
Burnout was, it was a 4-letter word for a while, and then it was like the theme of a season in your life. And I thought we could probably kick it off by you just setting the stage for what burnout was like. And a ton of people are affected by it, and a lot of people are affected by it and don't know it. It's a lot like there's a lot of parallels with sleep disorder breathing. Sleep apnea is a lot of people have it and they don't know, or they have it and they're attributing it to something else. Mm-hmm. So I think dentistry especially lends itself to being burnt out because one, dentistry can be a really lonely profession.
Totally.
And two, dentistry is a very demanding profession. And I think, the more often we get together with our homies, other dentists, I think we can learn from each other, but we don't talk about this that much. I think it's getting talked about a lot more lately, but, set the stage for us for what it was like for you. Maybe give us like what you would attribute like the ramp up to you going through this was like.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to talk about this. Kind of in anticipation of us recording this today, I did a blast on my social media. If anybody's experiencing burnout, message me for a book recommendation or DM me if you want to know the book that kind of made me gave me that zest back for life and for dentistry and why I consider I'm still practicing today. And you guys will get to hear it from Kyle's side too of what it was like to live with me when the practices were exploding and I was completely overwhelmed. But yeah, so, I've talked about burnout on a few other podcasts as guests. People have wanted to know, like, how do you juggle so much? Honest to goodness, like, guys, the number one question I get or statements I get from people is, I don't know how you do it. Or I don't know how you do so much.
It's a comment you get a lot. They're like, how do you do so much? Like, how do you do it all?
Yeah. And it used to, like, that comment I didn't really have an answer for. And I don't know. I'm just going to do until I die. Like, it just was like how I was, raised. And I think it's fairly innate. And I think it's common in the fact that you become a dentist and you're extremely type A and you're taught things need to be perfect to, half of a millimeter and less. And it just kind of this neuroticness to our profession. But it's really hard when you're going through it to recognize exactly what's happening. And it was a crazy journey for me. So if we back up to getting out of dental school, you work super hard in college. You're stressed out all the time because you have the impending DAT test and then you have dental admissions process. And it's everything from college, even high school, to getting into dental school is this consistent level of stress and always to the next thing, into the next thing, into the next thing. And I grew up as a competitive piano player, and that was another thing. Like the next song I had to do, the longest song I remember playing in one of my final recitals in high school was like 40 pages long. I mean, that was a huge undertaking to memorize all of that. And so I look at where I am now and kind of seeing like, well, I was a recipe for burnout from like a very young age because it just was this ladder that you consistently have to climb. Otherwise the world is ending or your life is over if this doesn't happen or whatever. So I get out of dental school and, we have a ton of debt. You and I started a family because we had put our entire 20s off basically for school. And, you want to build a practice and you want to be the person for your patients and your staff members. And, you get out and you're just going and going and going and you feel like you just have to be the end all be all for your patients. And I was that from the first person that walked in the door until the last person that walked out when we took over and I started practicing here at New Teeth in League City. Before I was in the original New Teeth office with my dad, and I always had somebody and I always had help. And we bought this practice. A lot of people don't know he was diagnosed with prostate cancer and had to very quickly leave and go to treatment in Florida for some months. And you weren't out of dental school yet. And I was just like completely running, like having to do everything. And then when you and I had a baby, we moved here and my mom was like, you really should practice close to home.
Back up just a little bit because I think you kind of blurred a couple of timelines there together. And I think it's really important because One, I think there's to connect the dots here. You got out of dental school, and then you went to practice with your dad, which was an awesome time. Immediately got pregnant, and so with our first, and then we had Benton, and then straight from Benton we went to move to be closer to family, and then before we moved, that's when your dad was diagnosed with cancer, right? And then that's when he bought the second practice.
Yeah, we were literally buying this practice, and it was such a blessing because
yes,
he literally would not even have known that he had it,
right?
Because the loan process required another life insurance policy, and in order to get the life insurance policy, you had to go do all this blood work. So it was really just kind of gives you chills when you think about like how everything went down, and
so you're now there's this practice that's kind of I don't want to say yoked onto your shoulders. I think that's a little dramatic, but like
it is. I don't think it's dramatic. Yeah.
Your dad leaves for Florida for several months, and then you're a new dentist, you're a new mom, and I'm not able to help because I have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to drive a little over an hour to school each day, and then I don't get home till like 6:30 or 7. So, I think that just like was the primer. Like if I'm on the outside, I'm looking like what's going on. I mean, there's all these new things happening to you personally and professionally, and so I just want to interrupt right there because you were getting on a roll, and I just wanted
I would have skipped that, and I think that is an important part of it because you always feel the weight of being a doctor and a provider to your patients. You feel that weight, and when you're also responsible for payroll and hiring and firing, which honestly for me was a huge blessing because I wasn't involved in hiring or firing ever. I've fired like one person because we've had such a built team and network. You've had to fire more people. I let him be the bad guy with a lot of that stuff, but that part wasn't on my shoulders, and that's on a lot of doctors' shoulders. I mean, the doctors that I'm leading now in the Sleep Well Mentor, we are constantly talking about burnout. I'm doing what I can do through a looking glass of knowing I've been where you are, and this is what's going to happen if you keep on that role, which I want to get to as this podcast keeps going. So we kick it off here in League City. I finally come here full time, and we had one associate who's now our business partner. It was great, and he was here a couple days a week with me. But I started down the journey of holistic and biologic dentistry, and I had this expectation for what I wanted the patients to experience when they came to see me. There is a dentist on every freaking corner, you guys. Like, so I knew that I was going to set myself apart because I hated insurance. I hated the idea that somebody was coming to me because that's where they could get a free cleaning. It just like didn't fit my like business model or idea for what my, ideal day or my patient avatar is that we've talked about before. But in that, I became everybody's person that came to see me because they would have cancer or they would have incredible problems like in their life or the history of their health. They'd have teeth that had bad dentistry or whatever it was. And I made the mistake of having my empathy basket be so large that everything got put into it. And I was the ultimate one that was responsible for making these people healthy, which was really hard. I did not have a cohort of physicians I was working with like I'm now. I did not have anybody else to really lean on for these patients. And then they would get, my phone number or add me on Facebook. Facebook was probably the biggest problem for me between like 2017 and 2019. I deleted it for like 18 months. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah.
But I was just ingrained that like if a patient needed me and they messaged me, like I needed to look at it because they needed me, right? And it was never an emergency. I mean, almost never an emergency. And I remember one night just like, you have a message in your Facebook messages and it's a patient and I can see that it's a patient. And it was about Zoom whitening at 9:30 at night, And while some would say like, well, how rude that they sent that to you. It's like, well, no, they just have access to me and they're laying in bed and they're like, oh, I want to ask her about whitening. But like, it was my problem that I felt the need to check it and answer it. Like what I had to work on was my response to this stuff, but I didn't know that then. So
I am in that camp that is rude. I'm solidly in that camp. That's taking advantage of a relationship.
Yeah.
But
But I can also be in that patient's position where they're just like, oh, they'll see it eventually. Like, I just want to ask about whitening. Like, I don't look at it like they were specifically trying to interrupt my night at home with my family. Like, but you and I are just different like that, you know? And the part that I can control is my emotions and my response and my boundaries, right? But I know that then. And I didn't tell you this probably until I was like just crying that you can go hire a new dentist because I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom now, which I've said a lot of times over the last 10 years. But I didn't, I wasn't sharing that. So I was just doing that. And it was just consistent. Or like, let's say the patient came in and then they were upset about some fee or some random thing. Like, who even knows? It's always about money. It was never about my dentistry. But they're going to like either text me or message me of that. And I'm like, I back my staff 1000%. Like, we have the best billing team on earth. Like, this is the cost. And you knew that going in. And I don't have anything to tell you. Like, I don't handle that part, whatever. But this was just going on so much that the level of like stress that I was feeling and the lack of joy that I was getting out of what I was doing was like completely unmanageable. And I didn't have anybody to help me through that. Not saying you weren't like so compassionate and all that, but like I didn't have like a rubric or a blueprint for you are becoming extremely popular and you need to protect your heart and your mind, and they need to not have you need to not add them on Facebook, and they need to not have your cell phone number. Like, I didn't have that. And I had been given advice in the past of like, yeah, give the patient your number, but this is different. Like what I was doing in dentistry was not like, a post-op call and wisdom teeth removal. Like, they're never going to text you again. Like, if they have a problem, of course we're there for you. But like, for me, it was so much more than that. Like, hey, I found these supplements at HEB. Do you think these are good? And I'm like, well, if I answer the question, I better research the dang supplements, because once again, they're leaning on me for that. So it's just like a lot of that was building up. And, you and I started having babies very quickly after, and I really just wanted to be able to be home with them. But at the same time, I had a ton of debt from dental school and 2 practices on my back. And it just wasn't in the cards to me. Like, I was going to go.
It's so funny because you say this on my back, and like for years you've said that, right? And I get what you mean. I didn't even
realize you've heard me say that before.
Oh, for years. And it's so like, I think it kind of just puts a cherry on top of the kind of person that you are, or that you feel, because you do carry a lot of that weight. Like you was talking about not sharing your cell phone number with patients. Like, it is very different for me to share my cell phone number with someone, because like my phone goes into do not disturb at 7, and there's only 3 people that can reach me after 7. And so, but my boundaries are a lot different than yours because we're different people.
I feel like you were born with boundaries. I don't know. We're so different in that regard.
Well, I've got my own safeguards in place that have always been there, or they evolve. And I think, because one thing you mentioned early in the story is you were I don't know what the right word is, but like when you're younger, you talk about piano, like you were a hyperachiever back then. You were not, or I say overachiever. That's the right word. You're an overachiever. You were in college when you were 15. And so one might say, well, you should be ready for even more, right? Like this should have been what you've been preparing for. You should be able to handle it. And as you get in further into the story, I think the takeaway here is that regardless of how well prepared you are for a heavy workload, it can still get you. So,
yeah, and it did. And I'm actually curious. So if we're fast forwarding to, pre-airway, but close to it, we're
rewinding.
One night, I remember a patient was complaining about something and they DM'd me about it. Okay. And I just I couldn't take any more complaints that day. It didn't matter what it was. It was just one of those days. I worked so hard. I'd probably seen like 50 or 60 patients between hygiene and my regular day before I had help. And I just remember getting a text, and I could just tell in that immediate moment that like something didn't go perfectly right. And in my mind, I had provided the best that I could give, like in that day or whatever it was. And I remember just handing it to you and being like, I cannot read this. I cannot do this. I don't even care what it is. Like this, you need to make this go away. And you are very good at making things go away for me. You are. And so I'm curious.
Deleted their number, blocked it, and then just erased
you
the
answered.
conversation.
No, you answered, but you answered with such directness that this needed to be forwarded on to our treatment coordinators, and they open at 8 a.m. on Monday or something. It was like you just closed it for me, and I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't married to you and had somebody to close it for me. Because like I know so many doctors that like they don't have anybody to close that for them. Their spouse is not in dentistry. Their spouse is not even in the same industry that they're in. And in that moment, they're still the one that has to deal with it. And again, my response to that was the problem. Of course, they had my phone number and that was a different part of the problem. But what I let it do to me was because I didn't have any tips or tricks or any sort of background on helping myself through that. So I'm curious for you, the day you made me delete my Facebook was the honest to God most freed I felt. Like nobody could get a hold of me now unless they called the front desk and an appointment was made, and it was all very planned in my day because it was 24/7 that I was available to the world.
Well, you kept grabbing my phone so you could get on Facebook and on my profile, but it was
just scroll, look at fun stuff. Yeah, I don't care. But like seriously, like when you finally made me delete it, what was it like for you?
It was
living with Kalli Hale.
Well, so we've jumped around a little bit, and we haven't really got up to that moment that I think like everything, because you're talking about some earlier stuff. You're talking about like I want to say like
2017, 2018.
That's like 2021, but either way, but it's like the tremor before the earthquake.
Yes.
Right. It's like you get signs that there's something wrong. The mountain's about to turn into a volcano.
Right.
And at that time, that was really good because we were growing really fast, and I wasn't going through burnout, but I was going through like absenteeism at home, where I was just like I was physically in the house, but I mentally wasn't there.
Yeah,
I got some really good advice about not bringing my laptop home anymore, and that really changed it. Just that one seemingly small thing, but when you can't work from home, you can't work, and that was really freeing for me, and I think it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. But for you, this like you would like ambush me with bad attitude. Not like me personally, but you'd ambush the whole car.
I'm so sorry.
Because you would get a text message from someone. You and I we're having like a pleasant conversation talking about like, hey, what do you asked me like, what do you want to eat for supper? I'm thinking, well, should I say green enchiladas? Should I say something else? And then you get a text message from a patient or a direct message from a patient, and you read it. Now you're pissed, and by the time I answer, you bite my head off about, well, we don't got time, and.
I believe that I did that 100%.
And I think there are, but I think like part of that, like going back, right, that would really piss me off. I'm going to bite your head off, and like loving husbands and wives do. They sit there and put their boxing gloves on early in the morning, so they don't get sucker punched before breakfast.
It's not that dramatic.
Joking.
We love each other.
It really like, you not being on Facebook was like probably like one of the healthiest moves you could have done early on. It was just like it's like a common sense thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we were in one of those moments where it was like we hear hooves, and instead of calling it a zebra, we called it a horse, and we were just trying to like your bucket is full.
Yeah.
And what's overflowing is your joy. What's getting out of the bucket is your joy. That's what I mean by that. And what needs to be in the bucket is joy. Right. This is one of the, if not the best times of our lives.
Totally.
Our kids are little, and you and I we're still flexible and healthy and feel young. But the transition that led to, because of course hindsight's like perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're looking back at this time as like really educational for ourselves and for the future versions of ourselves, and then hopefully you can help others who are going through this. But I don't know. I kind of thought that the next phase of your professional and personal burnout was like way less obvious that it was coming the way that it was coming. And do you want to?
You felt like it was. What? Say that again.
I like. It was almost like, okay, well, we thought this was We never
thought
called
that was
it
the
burnout.
height of the burnout.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
weren't calling it burnout back then. We were
No,
calling
I
it
didn't know
just,
that word.
you
I
know,
didn't know that word.
like overcommitment. We were
Right.
talking overworked, like those kind of things.
Yeah.
Kallie's overcommitted. She's overworked. She had too much going on, too much on her plate. We would say that for like how many times in a week. But then when we moved out of the house for the restoration of our home because all the mold that was in it from it flooding. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've skipped some years in there, so we've got to go back a little bit.
Let's quickly fill in the gaps.
Yeah. So when we moved out of the house, I had already read the book that we're going to reference on this call and stuff. And it was a super stressful time, but it was not anything like what 2020, 2021 was. So when I did the airway training and the practice really skyrocketed after that. And I came to this point where I had to decide if I was going to do general dentistry anymore. Like I was just going to be doing airway treatment. But I remember we took the kids to Florida for spring break. We went to Destin. And the first year we did that with them, they were really little. And I remember being so unbelievably burnt out that when we left, I remember telling you in the car, I will literally just turn my phone off. I don't care what happens at work. I literally don't care if somebody writes a 1-star review on the practice. I could care less. Like, I need a break. And I remember feeling such this overwhelming sense of just like, oh my gosh. And who knows? I literally used to say this, and I love everybody I work with. So it has nothing to do with team members. This was my own problem. But I used to just be like, I have no idea what sort of fresh hell or chaos awaits me when I get back from a vacation. It was like you paid for the vacation. In a whole bunch of people that were just waiting to see you. And now we're going to squeeze in like 65 people in one day. And I wasn't drinking water. I wasn't peeing during the day. I didn't take a lunch. Like there was just all sorts of stuff that looking back now, after I read the Burnout book that I'm going to talk about, that it should have been so obvious that my lifestyle, my work, was not sustainable. Like that was not going to be sustainable. So we're on the way to Destin and I just get on Amazon and I just literally searched on Amazon burnout. Like my dad actually is the one that said you're burnout. And I'd never heard that word before, but I finally just collapsed to them one day of just I'm removing amalgam 8 hours a day. I've got my poor hygienists waiting on me. Every single hygiene patient wants to see me. And everybody's frustrated and I can't do it all the time. And I can't, anyways, it was just all this stuff. And my dad was like, you're burnout and you need to, I don't remember exactly what he told me, but basically we got to figure this out because you're not going to keep practicing if this is how you're feeling. And so I just started reading some burnout. And actually I did a one-on-one call with somebody that you knew and, to see if they had some advice for me. I was like, I need to find somebody that's literally been where I've been. Have you been this popular in the practice that nobody wants to see the other doctors and they only want to see you and blah, blah, blah. And of course that has happened to many dentists. I am not special. But what did you do to get out of that? And so I took a call with somebody and it was not super helpful. And I didn't get anything from that was going to change the game for me. And I started reading reviews on burnout books on Amazon. And I found this book called The 7E Solutions to Burnout by Dr. Sharon Grossman. And I don't know why I picked it. It just seemed good and it had very good reviews. There was other ones that also had great reviews. And you told me you're going to stop being a dentist on Tuesdays. You were like, I was Monday through Thursday. You fought
me so hard when that happened.
Well, I don't remember it that way, but maybe I did. Maybe initially I was like, impossible. Until we hired Katie Goldberg. I was like, this is impossible. There was literally no chance that I could not be there on a day, which is so stupid. Of course you cannot be there. I tell the doctors that I help all the time, you have one life and you get to make your day be however you want it to be. How do you want your day to be? Yep. But I was in so deep, there was no crawling out of it. I didn't want to let anybody down. And so I bought the book and you took Tuesdays away from me. And you were like, but this was it's years probably later than it should have been. And I spent Tuesdays, but this was before I had 4 jobs, just working on myself, just reading. And I would take chapters of the book and I brought my notes with me because this is going on year 3 since I've read this book. And I literally have page after page after page. This is a book that makes you work. It's a book that makes you think about your situation. You have to write things down. You have to process them. And I would literally not be who I am today doing what I'm doing to the capacity that I am had I not read her book. And I would love to meet her one day. Maybe this will go viral and she'll get to hear this. I have since bought every book that she has written and and they're all very small, and I wish they were longer, and read them. And the one I'm in right now is called Motivated to Stay. And it's a way to make sure that your employees are happy and they stay with you, and you're hiring appropriately, and you're not keeping people too long that shouldn't be there, and all this stuff. And it was just wildly helpful. And people will ask me, like, well, what did you get out of the book? And I realized that the situation that you're in, you have to fix. Nobody can fix it for you. And that it's probably not your job. It's probably the way you are handling things in your environment. People think their job is the reason that they hate their life. They quit their job and they go on to the next one, and it's the same cycle. And one of the quotes that I wrote down in here was, by being curious about your thoughts, you remove the assumption that they're factual. Okay? By being curious about your thoughts, by being curious about your thoughts, you remove the assumption that they're factual. And you talk to yourself more than you talk to anybody all day long. And you will have experiences with people in conversations that are very different. Your perspective of what we talked about versus mine, what I heard, what you heard, can be very different. And your mind can create scenarios and tell you things like, that patient hates you and they're never coming back, or they're going to leave a 1-star review. And you're going to dwell on that for nights and nights and lose sleep like I did, when none of that is true. And you don't get any leadership in burnout training in dental school or college or anything. Mm-hmm. There was no framework for me to ever actually identify what I was thinking about and how I could process bad news. You're like a freaking behemoth. I don't know how you process bad news like you do. I always say you're like
thank you.
A duck, like on the water, like acting all calm and collected, and like you're paddling like hell underneath is all I can imagine. But you're built differently than me. As a woman, as a girl, I'm like, you don't like me? That's a problem. Not anymore. Could care less, but it's like literally it's a thing. So there were things like that in this book that I recommend every single person read. It's not even aimed towards dentistry. Dr. Grossman has helped people that were CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and lawyers that were like literally on the edge of life because their job and everything was so bad, and they lost relationships and marriages and children and things that just like, because they just thought all they, could do was their work. And little by little, I started just coming out of this fog, just having Tuesdays. I tell my doctors, you need an admin day. It's not at work. You will get bugged if you're at work. You need to do it at home, and you need to have quiet. You need to run your numbers and think about yourself and what are your goals and what do you want to do? And you will be a better leader in your practice. You will be a better dentist to your patients, a better wife, a better sister, a better mom, dad, whatever, if you have worked on yourself. So there were things like that in here and it took me, just so everybody knows, a year to read this book. A year. Mm-hmm. Because it's not, you don't just flip through it. You got to put the work in. And I wanted total quiet. I'd put my AirPods in and listen to white noise and just like really, truly have some self-reflection on what I thought I needed to do and who I needed to be for other people. And it changed everything for me. So that book got me out of some really, really tough, times, and helped me realize that the practice was going to be okay. Like if I was not the end all be all, guess what? Practice is gonna be okay. Like I'm still there. I'm still working, but you got me help. And then we decided to renovate. So what I remember is in 2020, we decided that we were going to expand the building, but I don't know if you remember this, but I told you and my dad, if you guys do not find me help and make this office bigger, I'm cutting my days. Right?
I remember because we were in your parents' living room, and like your parents have been our business partners forever. And I had to pitch your mom and your dad on expanding the office.
Yeah, because it was a lot of freaking money.
Of course, it was $1 million.
Yeah.
And so I remember, actually, I just pulled those up and showed them to someone the other day. The old projection. It was like
my mom. She was like, "Oh my gosh, Kyle, you did it!"
I can't remember what I called it, but I called it like growing legs or something like that. But I called the presentation "Growing Legs," and we were producing like $2.4 million that year, net production. And I was like, we got to expand, and we had the opportunity to. And then I had the projections on there. Well, like the projections were like way too conservative because like expanding the office blew the doors off the office, literally and figuratively.
How amazing it'd be, and you get me help, and I'm happy again. What I can do.
Well, and it was like one of those weird moments where I knew, like deep down, that like you would, and I still believe this, and this is, I think you don't realize how often we still are like, not argue is the wrong word, but debate about this. Yeah, you and me. About the value of your time. And what I knew 4 years ago was that if you cut a day, that you would be more productive for the other 4.
Yeah, and I couldn't even see out. I was like, you're crazy.
But it was like, on the other hand, I was like, if you cut a day, that frees up a lot of production to bring in an associate, and we would be competitive for associates. That was a big part of it. Another part of it was that you were at both ends, and we needed you to. You were so busy clinically, you weren't able to improve anything else.
Nothing. I know.
And
I didn't write notes, nothing. It was
your
like
notes,
absolutely crazy.
Your communication with the staff,
yeah.
Your contributions to marketing, like your contributions to hiring, like your contributions to training, like all those things were literally left up to everyone else.
Yeah, I had nothing else to give.
I was training your assistants, I think, at one point, and I was like, I don't know what she's doing, but do it better. And so it was a really good moment. And now, but this is like every couple of years since then has been a conversation. Okay, like I think you should cut another half day.
Yeah.
Okay, then another half day, then another half day. And it was this really cool study we've been able to do over the last 5 years of like what kind of production can you maintain based on how few hours can you work in a week. Luckily, you have a really strong support team that's very experienced, and so it's really different now. But you going through that burnout, the advice I got, believe it or not, I don't know if I ever told you this, but the advice I got, because I was like, of course, like I could see the solution, like, and I'm being facetious, like for you.
Right. You thought you had it all figured out.
I thought I had it all figured out, and you and I would argue about that, and I would be trying to help you.
I know you did mean very well.
and then one day I was talking to a mentor of mine, and I was tired of trying to help you and all the other stuff that was going on. And his advice was stop, but and solely take the role of a compassionate husband. And that's what I did. And my life got way better after that. But it was this real twist. Like we've known each other since like you were 15, I was 16. We've been together since. And I've never not tried to help you fix a problem.
Yeah, when you don't now, it kind of irks me, by the way. So, like, can you please fix this?
So it was just like, hey, don't keep your distance, but don't try to solve the problem. Because like, and what I've learned since then is that like this applies to everybody, right? Like I can't go help someone that doesn't want help.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't help you with what you were going through because you weren't looking for that from me, which is totally fine. But what you were looking for was support.
Yeah.
And
permission to stop what I was doing.
Yeah. So,
sure.
That was such a fun lesson, right? Like,
I got a lot of gray hair from it for sure.
Yeah, you color your hair, but I don't know.
But y'all did. I told you guys, if you do not make this practice bigger or find me help, I'm done.
Yep, you totally did.
I was like, I could care less if I see another tooth or fill another tooth.
I looked at your dad. I was like, can you come back for an extra 2 days a week? And he just smiled.
Well, what I thought was really funny is when I finally threw a fit and put literally like, you guys are going to lose your number one producer if you don't do this. Yeah, we're like, oh, hey, yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. And I'm like, okay. Like, so it just tells you to be bossy and sassy when sometimes it works out for you. No. So, yeah, but I don't know. It was really, really a crazy time. But to have, when we hired Katie Goldberg to come in and start helping, my life was so different. Like, because you and Dad are busy. Y'all do surgery. You weren't wanting to do all the hygiene exams and the fillings and stuff like that. So you guys had already like plucked yourself away from some of what you didn't want to do. And I was like, that's an option? Like, it was like so foreign, honest to goodness. Like, you mean I have a say in what I can do? I'm just supposed to do everything. And I think that's an important point to drive home for people who are going through this right now with whatever aspect of it, you know, they're going through, is that you do get to have your day be however you want it to be. And you do need to make decisions in your life that support your health and your ability to be more productive if that's what you want to do. But you can't do that if you can't get yourself out of the hole that I was in. And everybody helped with that. I mean, my parents, the two people behind the scenes in this room. And it'd be interesting to know other people's perspective of like what dealing with me was like. I know you got the brunt of it for sure, because I was like, you had to. But yeah, so I recommend that book. And I really think, you said earlier, dentistry's lonely. I think it is the most lonely profession. I see the way people treat each other online. I was in a Facebook group.
You're talking about other dentists.
Other dentists. Yeah. I saw a Facebook group the other day where this guy was super happy with this case. And it was so pretty. It was so pretty. He did full mouth rehab in composite. And I saw that there was a comment. And I knew, because of the actual group that it was in, that comment was going to be negative. I knew.
All
and
those
it was.
Facebook groups
and I couldn't help it. And I said
rough.
something. I just had to. I was very nice in the way I said it, but the person just decided to say, oh yeah, they like it initially and then it stains and then it's terrible. And I was like, how dare you? Like, this guy's so happy with his work and it looks beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, well, that was 10 years ago, but it's still looking good. Like, obviously, like, and my comment back was like, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure every dentist knows composite stains, but you felt the need to remind us, it just, those kinds of things happen. And if you don't have parents in dentistry or friends that you're leaning on in dentistry, like, it is just pretty much awful.
Or what if you're finding that mentorship in the wrong places?
They are.
Because that's what those free communities are like, and probably even some of the paid ones. I've never paid to be in a bad one, so I wouldn't know. But the free communities, man, they make you feel so small. They're well, and nobody
wants to post anything because they're afraid somebody's going to like call you out and tell you why it's bad.
Right.
And I'm sure it exists for hygiene. I'm sure it exists for whatever. And It's like, just be kind, like, and be supportive. I did a Sleep Well mentor call before you and I recorded this today. And so a big question came up this morning about stuff like this and what you should do when you get bad news from your office manager. And the specific question was around like, can I schedule a certain time for when I get that news? Because the news turned out to not be that bad. But it was bad, and it totally affected how the morning went for that doctor and the patients they were talking to, because in the back of their mind, they thought there was somebody that was so mad and going to totally just like take a crap on their life. And
you're saying that like an office manager said, hey, I have bad news I have to give you. When can I give it to you?
To the dentist at a certain time in the day. That it
right
was like,
now.
Right. But the actual, for me, advice to this doctor is change the way it affects you. Because you don't want all your bad news coming at noon on Tuesday. You're going to hate your lunch break every single week. Let's figure out a way to make sure that the stuff that you need to be shielded from, you're shielded from, like on a need-to-know basis, which my team does so well. I told the doctors today, I was like, nobody protects me like my team. Nobody. You don't get past the front door. I'm sorry. I don't care if you say you're my grandma. They know who my grandma is. Like, you're not getting in. I don't care if you said we were DMing each other on Instagram. Like, maybe not. I don't know. Like, they just protect me so well. And they don't tell me 90% of the bad news that comes up to them that patients were mad about. And it's always about money. It's always about money. I always say nothing makes a denture fit worse than a bill. And everything is about money, typically, not my care, which is great and comforting, but still. But they hide that from me. And I told her, I was like, it's important that she does that. The OM does that. And also that you shield yourself from how you let it affect you, because it's the only thing you can control.
Mm-hmm. I think that is like this example specifically, like I am 100% the kind of person that, like, if you've got bad news, give it to me right now. Right now. Like, because honestly, like, one, you and I are just going to think about this, and it's going to affect the rest of the day. Not like in a huge way, but like it's in the back of my mind, and I'd rather the back of my mind to be filled with something else. But I think reading books like the one, the 7 habits?
7 E solutions to burnout.
So it can help you find out things about yourself, I imagine.
Yes.
I haven't read the book, but that's like a cheat code, right?
It absolutely is.
And if you can figure out something about yourself and then you could tell others, then they know the rules, right? It's like opening a board game and starting to play the game before you read the rules. How many board games? We've played so many board games, I feel like, in this winter so far. And you need to know the rules. And when your team knows the rules, then it gets easier for them to have your back on things like this,
Totally.
right? Like if the rule is no vendor gets past the front desk without an appointment, right? Then they never get past the front desk. And then your front desk isn't coming up, hey, you know, someone here from Ivoclar's here and they just want to drop off some
Don't
brochures. And
Don't
I'm like,
care.
okay, they drop them off right there at the front desk.
Yeah.
But you don't want to have to even deal with that.
Exactly.
And so
Which new practices, new treatment coordinators, one doctor offices, that's hard to get to if you don't know to do
that's
it.
very hard.
And that's the part that I think is so valuable in mentorship groups is that you can be preloaded with what I wish I would have read that book in dental school. It wouldn't have been as helpful. I don't think I wouldn't be able to but still to be preloaded with some tips for stress and lack of resources and how you manage things is really important. And that's what I hope this helps when people listen to it, because it was a big deal for me.
Do you think it's helpful this was really helpful for me. You asked like, how can I take bad news? This doesn't really affect that, but it affects like my week. And I've come out a couple of times when I've been overwhelmed and I send everyone my week's schedule of like times that I am disturbable and times I'm not disturbable. Essentially, that's what they'll see on it. Like there's like, I don't know if you remember, but back when I was a clinician, those were obviously days that were in flux, right? I would take the gotcha minute meetings because they're usually patient related. But then on my admin days, especially when I went to 2 admin days, people just walk in. It really breaks your train of thought. And so then I remember Janie, our office manager who retired from Houston. She was like one of the first ones I worked through this with. And I was like, I'm doing deep work here. You cannot there is no, I can't respond to a message or anything like that. Right. Then there's shallow work. And then there's other times where I'm with my family. When you did that. You know, yes. This is what family time. But you know what? Even though I added time for like shallow work on Saturdays and Sundays, because those are times that I would okay, I'm just going to catch up on some reporting, or I am going to look at this marketing opportunity or whatever. And my weeks went really smooth. Now I slowly as things changed, I would get away from that week, but then it was a nice thing for me to use whenever I felt like my weeks were getting out of control. Right. Like I was barely making it into like Thursday morning, feeling like I had, my hair
so
done.
Behind right.
And so, but then that would fix it. And I think like structure for me has been one of like the most helpful things. And if you look at people have always been commented when they see my Google calendar on my phone, like, oh my gosh, no, this is like bliss. Cause I know exactly what I'm going to do from 9 to 3:00. Mm-hmm. And then after 3:00, I'm more flexible. I can go pick up my kids from school. I can do some other work. I can, catch up on a book, or I can, watch this webinar. Definitely. So what do you think about?
That was wild. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what do you think about having structures? Do you think if it was early on, if that was something that you implemented before all this happened?
Oh my gosh, 100%. If there was blocked out time where I knew that I had some flex time, I had no flex time. I had no flex time, and I needed that flex time, and I think that is really good. And so for your perspective is different because you've been 1 day or 2 days a week for so long. Mm-hmm. And for the doctors that aren't, they can't even fathom, they're not paying themselves. They could not even hire an associate, right? Like that it's a little bit different. I remember block scheduling when we finally started doing block scheduling in League City, to where Monday mornings I was doing sleep test interpretation because I couldn't be interrupted and I wanted to be there for hygiene. So we had to know how to schedule the day. That was very freeing for me because I sort of knew what to expect in my day. Dentistry is very unexpected. You have no idea sometimes when you walk in what you're going to be doing or what you're going to need. And everybody's got to work together so that Kalli didn't run behind because I was 4 or 5 people in an hour. And so I look at what you're saying with structure in your week as to what can their structure in their schedules look like. And then how can they make that work for them? I mean, you have to make money at the end of the day. They have to be there. They have to produce dentistry in order to make money. You're not on salary. There ain't no benefits. It's just, you produce, you get paid, you don't. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think some of the rat race hamster wheel stuff starts happening for them. And you start squeezing. 2 weeks ago, one of my doctors was nearly in tears, and she's like, they will squeeze somebody in anywhere. I get no time, mm-hmm. zero. I can't think about a case or prepare for the call with me or like anything because, oh, this person just needed this one little thing, which is like, I'm sure everybody at League City can relate to, but it's like the whole room has to be turned over and Kalli has to go in and like whatever. And so I think having boundaries and then making sure you are a master scheduling, like you've got scheduling down pat, and then just don't do what you don't like to do. You want to do endo? Guess what? Don't do it. And then there's people that are going to tell you like, oh, what you got to produce, and this is the way to produce a blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person that's overworked and literally might quit. So let's like not do that and only do what you want to do. Yep. And maybe nobody's ever given you permission for that before. I'm giving you permission. You don't want to do crowns anymore? Great. You don't want to pull teeth? Guess what? My dad said I had to do everything for 5 years. He said do everything for 5 years because he would be there to catch me no matter what. So he did not let me not do anything for 5 years. And you know what the first thing I dropped at 5 years? Extractions.
And endo.
Oh yeah, I hated endo too. But extractions. I was like, I'm not pulling teeth anymore. He goes, no, you got to do it for 5 years. And I was like, I've been out 5 years now. And he was like, no way. and just to set the record straight, I'm really good at pulling teeth and I can pull teeth. I just choose not to pull teeth. Okay.
Okay. Raise your hand if you ever hurt your hand pulling teeth before. Not me.
Okay, so I just did say I'm not quite as good at it as Kyle. He looks at teeth and they fall out, which is what he loves for me to tell his patients. But I just decided I'm not doing that anymore. Like nobody is literally going to make you do the procedure. The patient might be upset and they might be like, "Are you sure you can't?" And they're like pull, and you're like, "Oh, but I'm here and I took off work for this." Like they're going to say anything they can to try to make it happen for them because they need it done for them. It has nothing to do with you. They don't care really if you're stressed or you saw 15 people. It's not. It's selfish, but it's like. It's just about what they need. Like, and you have to be able to say no, but you need to have a good person to refer to so that they still like you at the end of the day. But
so you just talked about a couple of really like you're covering some really important stuff. And two things. One, what I want you to talk about, like, what do you think you're doing different with your team? Because your team truly has your back. Like
unlike
in every
anybody
sense
I've
of the
ever
word,
seen.
Like
I'm so blessed.
They would rather burn their schedule down than add one thing to yours that might stress you out.
I don't know what I did to deserve it.
How did you do that? And second, after you do that, we're going to talk about, like, you said you stopped doing endo, you stopped pulling teeth. Like for me, it was like no more restorative. And that was really hard for some of my patients because like, wait, we're done with the surgical side of therapy. We're going to go to the restorative side, which is not with me. And so it was like retraining your patients, which also came with retraining the team.
Yeah. So which one do you want to do first?
The first one.
Retraining.
No.
Why they have my back.
Yes.
Well, I don't know why they have my back. We should interview them and find out why they have my back. No, I think when your team, mine has been with me since literally like the start of me being a dentist. But I think that says a lot too for the fact that they want to stay around. And I can't tell you, oh, say this and they will love you forever. I think my authenticity and my love for my patients and the fact that my team knows that I am absolutely not in this for the money. Like, I don't care what it is they choose. I just want to help them choose whatever it is that they need to do, whether it was their amalgam fillings or it's airway or, if they want to go have jaw surgery, I've got a guy for that. Like whatever it is, I want to be that connection and that liaison to help them to make that decision. And when your team feels that you are literally just in it for the betterment of their patients, I think it helps them to trust you more. And we can ask them, I don't know. But for me, I always wanted to take care of them. I wanted to make sure they were okay too. I would hope that they would come to me if they needed something or something needed to be better. And I wasn't always that person for them. I wasn't like you. I think you were, and Dad and Jackie helped a ton. But I feel like your team knows you very intimately. And when you're in those moments with the patient, if they don't feel like you're honest or if you don't treat them well. I mean, that's another thing. Like if you're rude to them, there are times where you have to be extremely on point and extremely direct. And I was known, maybe I still am, I don't know, we could ask the assistants, but like I was known early on in my career as like they were scared. And my dad had talked to me a couple of times, like, you have to earn respect. Like you got to earn respect and you do have to demand a certain respect, but it's earned. And so and that I don't think comes easy to people. I think it is really easy for especially a new dentist to look down on their assistant, and they have a very hard job. They have a very hard job. You want to turn the room over, grab the patient, bring him in, do the blood pressure, hope you get the x-ray right, like whatever they have to do for you. And then if you're not treating them kindly either, that is a problem, you know? And I had an assistant once tell me that the person that she used to work for would throw instruments. Like, first of all, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be that patient, but like would be so mad, or as they're handing her or she's handing them something, they're ripping it out of their hand. Like, my girls will tell you, I am all about the patient when I'm in the operating. Like they will be nervous if something went wrong, whatever, like, but that when we walk out of that operatory, we're going to tackle it together. And I do love them. In the moment, my patient is my ultimate priority, but I'm not being disrespectful and I'm not out to ruin their day because of stuff that's happened. So anyways, I don't know.
Can I make some comments?
Sure.
So I think transparency and like what you are trying to do professionally has been one of your superpowers. And and I've only realized that recently because of some dentists that we've talked to, and dentists they feel like they have a secret they're trying to hide, like a squirrel. They're trying to bury the nut, and they're trying to hide it for whatever reason, whether that's like like them not telling their team they're going on vacation.
Oh, that's come up a couple times in the manager group. They don't want to say they're going.
And like whoa.
Why?
That's a
also
big one.
Why? Yeah.
And then, but with you do a really good job about coming back, and being excited an appropriate amount for like a change in the practice, right? Like over the last few seasons of the practice, it's been, this evolution, and you're very authentic, but you're also very excited. And man, I'll tell you what, when you're in the treatment room, it is about the patient, but you also like, you're trying to like, I think you're trying to like tiptoe around the word of like, you're not, it's funny. Like, you're very direct with your team because you're right. It's about patient care. But as soon as you walk out of the case opening, you're right there with Haley. You're right there with Deborah. And you're like, okay, we need this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And you smile, and y'all are fine. You go right back in the next one, and it's about getting it's about getting it done. And you have like this trick that you do. Where,
I do.
Yeah,
tell me, what's my trick?
Where you like trick people into thinking you're this like very intense person, and then you're bubbly and smiley. And it's like,
well, I am intense.
What just happened?
I think.
What just happened? We got tricked. And, but it's a gift. Yeah. But I think like, you're trying to do those things. I think a lot of what you're doing is intentional. And
for sure it is.
So the second thing is, you're changing your schedule and your patients, like, because you're going to have those legacy patients that have been used to seeing you for comprehensive care. Now you're ready to stop doing this thing. I know, like in your mentorship program where you talk to people twice a week and they share their concerns and you help them go through case studies. But I know recently there was one that I was helping you with, and this kind of came up, and it was like, I'm so busy with airway and I've got an associate, and it's like, well, that's perfect. Just, move the restorative schedule. Well, they don't want the patient doesn't want to see them. And so how did you solve for that problem?
Well, I couldn't have done it without the front desk team, but so that happened a lot. And they shielded me. Again, they shielded me a lot. I made sure that I had that conversation with the patient to help prep them for that, especially if I was doing the comp exam and hygiene. I would be like, I only do the sleep and the ortho around here. I'm super excited to help you with that. I've got some great doctors that will help you do all the other things that we just found. And then you'll circle back to me. So that's okay on new patients because they're like, yeah, whatever. Like they've been here before, whatever. The ones that were older and had seen me longer just had more of a pause. Like, really, you can't do my crown anymore. And I just said, I am so busy. Me making you wait 4 to 6 weeks to do something like this would be below the standard of care, or months or whatever, however long it was.
It was a long time.
And I said, I have found what I love to do, and it's not this, but Dr. Katie's stellar at this, and it's going to go great for you, and it's going to be handled really well. My team dealt with it more on the phone for sure, because really what happened leading up to me saying like, that's it, I'm done filling teeth, is my schedule between restorative and airway became so unmanageable that it felt abusive. And I remember telling you and Jackie that at one point, that the way people were put in there was impossible. There would literally be times where I had to be in 3 rooms at one time. And again, height of burnout. How do I make everybody happy? How am I possibly going to go see this hygiene patient that somebody on the Facebook group recommended, and I have to go see that person, or that person's going to be mad? This is everything going through my head. And I walked into work one day, it was on a Thursday, and I was supposed to have a lunch hour. This was before, like, I had shortened the day and worked through lunch. And I was double columned booked from 8 to 4 with no break. And there was like no less than 40 people in there.
And I don't think that one included. So
that didn't include hygiene.
Then hygiene, you get marked a different color if you request to see Kalli. And so they're, I think, a pink or purple.
Purple.
And so it was that.
You were actually working that day because it was a Thursday.
Yeah,
you were working.
You and I stepped aside. We went to the
I walked
lab
out
together.
And you knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I literally, I was like, if I was ever, I don't get panic attacks. Like I'm not, but like if I was ever going to, it was going to be that morning. Cause I don't know, whatever happened the day before was a hard day. And then I show up and I look at that. I think I even texted you about it. And I was like, I'm not doing this. Why did somebody book through my lunch without even asking me?
Yeah.
Like, and we had, I don't remember what associate, we had some new people in the doctor's room. And I was not in a position to like break down in front of everybody, but you happened to see me. And I literally walked outside. Like I left, I went through the lab and I left. And I was just like standing by that little staircase thing. And I'm just like, I refuse. I'm going to go home. I'm going to sneak out to my car and I'm going to leave. And everybody that did this to the schedule can just deal with telling every single patient that they're not going to see.
Well, we still made them deal with it.
And I broke down. I mean, this is raw truth of like the bubbly Kalli that's like made it, but this is what happened to me getting to that point. And I just want to help people to avoid that. And so what I realized is like, I just can't do their feelings anymore. I'm not going to do it. First of all, if I prep your crown, I don't even have an appointment to seat your crown. Mm-hmm. So now I'm asking somebody else in the practice, like you seated so many crowns for me that year where you're just going in and gluing it on. And I did, and I'm just like, that's not good for the patient. They might think they want me to do it, but I literally told them before, I promise you don't want me to do it. You don't.
Yep.
Because if you have anything that comes up, I literally won't be able to help you. Like you're going to have to see somebody else. And that's not fair to that doctor because that doctor gets paid $0 to help me. Like if something like that happens. So we had a big sit down with the team. We started doing block scheduling and my team never complained to me one time about telling patients that. We had huddles, we prepped, we said this person's going to expect to see Kalli. They are not going to see Kalli today. We're going to tell them that when they show up and blah, blah, blah. And they're still great. I still hear and you guys all know he's behind the camera of all these podcasts. I still hear him tell people like, she's probably not gonna be able to see you today, but if I can, and I do from the bottom of my heart, like if I can in that moment, like I so will do it. I absolutely thrive chairside. My patient, I love talking to them. I love like the fact that I can be so dissociated from like whether or not they say yes to something because I truly just want them to like make the decision on their own. And I'm really freaking good at what I do. And I love dentistry, but I just can't be it for everybody. I can't. Like I need to not bite your head off on the way home, like, or whatever, So,
I remember that day, like just to like live it for a moment. And I was like, okay, because I'm definitely in like, leaving. I'm going to fix this. Well, I saw you leave and I was like, And then I heard the back door open, like to leave the building that never gets used. And I'm like, uh-oh.
She finally quit.
I'm leaving, And I think I had like
I was hyperventilating.
Yeah, you were definitely different. We were very different.
I was like, go look at my schedule.
It reminded me of the face you had when we used to walk into the hospital for one of your scheduled C-sections.
Oh, yeah. Fear.
That's kind of like what it was. It was like, but I remember I was like, I'm going to go help her see some patients. And I'd like walk in and be like, all right, I know I'm not Kalli, but I'm her husband.
He really did try.
And so I was just looking at and looking at Tara and looking at Erica. And I was like, help me out here. Like, what do we do?
What do I say?
and I was like, I would like work really hard to get down to like, do we really need Kalli here? Do we really need? And I think I got a couple of them out the door without needing to see you. And then it was like, man, that's a really good question. I don't have the answer. So, but that was like but okay, in this story, that didn't end that day. Do you remember?
No. I mean,
To
I was
fix
booked
the
like
schedule,
that for months.
that schedule was like that for weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was another thing. There was no planning a change. There was no planning a change of any kind in my schedule without 6 to 8 weeks notice.
Yeah, you couldn't implement next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which once I realized that was just going to be the thing, I started thinking way in advance. Okay, well then what do I want anything to change the following year? Do I want anything to change in 6 months? And you don't think about that. You just let yourself get to the point where you're going to literally quit, which would be terrible for me. And then it gets to that point. So yeah, that was a turning point. I forgot about that day very briefly until you started talking about like, when did you stop and how was that? The team did a great job on the phone just saying, listen, she's not going to be able to do it. We would love to keep you here and do it. If you want to find somebody else to do it, no problem. She'll manage everything else that she's managing for you. But the fact of the matter is the patients wanted to stay in the practice. Do you want to go get a new doctor or a new dentist? No, you really don't. So odds are they're going to try your person out and just make sure your person is good.
Yeah.
Make sure the associate that's replacing the like top tier doctor is like going to do a good job, and ours do. So anyways, it was a really big growing spurt. This is probably one of our longest podcasts talking about, but I think it's important to discuss.
I think we're over an hour.
We are. Yeah.
I think we cover some really solid stuff. And I think like you provided some good resources, some good storytelling.
Well, and I think that everything that I went through prepped me for where you and I are right now, because I still get the comments of, I don't know how you do so much, which I do have an answer for that now. And I do tell doctors, I have a ton of people helping me. That's my answer. I do a lot because I have so many people helping me run my life. And they're like, oh, and that's the honest to goodness truth. There's like absolutely no chance I do what I'm doing without a ton of people and a ton of assistance and a ton of help. But right now, running the Airway Dentist with you, being the chief clinical officer of the Airway Dentist, being the chief dental officer for Tooth Pillow, still being a clinical practicing dentist 2 days a week right now at New Teeth, and running the Sleep Well Journey mentorship. Oh, and my mom, and I have like friends I want to hang out with on occasion and like other things in my life. Had I not done this, I would not be able to manage how I kind of like compartmentalize my brain now, thanks to this, had I not gone through what I went through. So I'm very grateful for it. And I just want to help doctors and anybody listening to get out of that and to realize it's your mindset. You have to change your mindset. You have to realize that there are things that out of your control. And if you can change the way, this is one last thing, if you can change the way you perceive threat, your day will be different, because there's a lot of threat in dentistry, which is that adrenaline response. Oh, their crown fell off again, or oh, their expander came off again, or oh, they're upset, or whatever. If you can change the way you perceive that threat and protect yourself from it actually getting into your soul, you will be a happier, healthier, longer, practicing individual.
Well, on that note, I think we should close it out.
See y'all for episode 5.
Yep. Thank you.